All right, Math 7s, Chapter 9. I'm going to do some 9.4 work this morning. So I'm checking out the example on page 392, and I've kind of recreated the pattern that they've got. I don't have the same colors they do, so you're going to have to deal with me. But in general, we've got these three in the middle that stay the same, and then the other colors are different on the outside. So the pattern is the same, colors a little different. All right. The first thing that they tell us is that this is, they actually tell us what this is, and I don't want to do that. I want to figure it out for myself. So I'm going to ignore the colors for now, and I'm just going to do the totals. So what I want to do is I'm going to write figure number here, although your book sometimes uses N for that. It doesn't really matter what letter you pick. Just pick a letter and go, this is the figure number. So I'm going with F, and I'm going to make some lines here. Figure 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that I have written, so I'm going to write 1, 2, and 3. And the next thing I'm going to do is total up all of the blocks from each of the figures. So figure 1 has 1, 2, 3 here, and then 4 here for a total of 7. So let's see, should be used. The total number of blocks is 7. Yeah, I guess for this one I'll do the same thing as your book did. So we'll change the F to N, and I'll just write figure equals N in this little bracket. So now we match your book. Okay, figure 2, I've got the 3 in the middle plus 8 on the outside for a total of 11. For figure 3, I have 3 in the middle plus a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 3, so 12, that's 15. Doesn't really matter how you choose to tally them up, just make sure you're getting a good count. I use the 3 in the middle as my start point to show you a pattern. So each one of these has 3 in them, right? So when I go to make the formula to figure out how to get this number when they give me this number, I'm going to make the formula equal to t, because that's what I'm finding out, that's my total. And I want to figure out how much it goes up by each time. So when it went from 7 to 11, it went up by, what's the difference between 11 and 7? 4. So it went up by 4. It went up by 4 again from 11 to 15. The number that it goes up by each time is the one you're multiplying the figure number by. So we're going to start with our formula. We're going to go 4n. So that tells me it goes up by 4 each time. I can see that there's 4 extras here, there's 8 extras here, there's 12 extras here, so it's going up by groups of 4. Then I look at the number that stays the same. And the number that stays the same each time is 3. There was 3 plus 4, 3 plus 8, 3 plus 12. So I'm going to add 3. Now the other way to look at that would be if I plugged this number into that formula, I don't get this number yet. I would get 1 times 4 equals 4. So then I add the 3 to make sure that I can make it to the 7 that I need to make it to. So you can look at this one as an adjuster. Most of the time you're going to have patterns like this where you're just going to go, oh, that number occurs each time, so that's the one I'm going to add. Once in a while you're going to get a sketchy one that's not quite that simple, so you just remember that that's your adjuster. The number it goes up by each time is the one you multiply your figure by, and then do whatever you have to do to adjust the equation to get the answer you need to get. Okay, so we can extrapolate this pattern. I can go, okay, well, what if 4? If I were to draw out 4, I don't want to mess with sticky notes like that. That's a lot of sticky notes. But I can go, okay, well, it has to go up 4. So that would be 19. I could also look at it like t equals 4 times 4 plus 3. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 3 is 19. See, it works either way. These things have got a lot of different things that you can play with and get the right answer. So I can do another one for 5. Again, I'm going to go up by 4. You can see it would be pretty tedious if we just kept writing this out. If somebody asked you for something like, well, what's the 10th figure worth? Then we just go, oh, well, I could plug in a 10 here and go, whoops, that doesn't get gone. 4 times 10 would be 40, and 3. So I could say, oh, well, if it was 10, it'd be 43. But if I'm just doing 5, then I go, okay, I want 5. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23. Does that go up from 19 by 4? 19 plus 4 is 23. Good to go. So this equation was graph the relation. That's what this example was asking us to do. So I've set up a little graph, grid-ish here. You should use graph paper. If you don't have graph paper at home, you can go online and just look for a free printable graph paper and print it that way. Or you can come to the school, just give us a call and somebody can come to the school for you and grab some. All right, got our graph paper, and I'm just gonna kind of eyeball the spots, but you should not, because it's really a lot easier to get to know that you're right if you're using graph paper, because there's a really clear pattern when you start working with it. Okay, so I'm a bit of a cheater. I do a shortcut, and my shortcut is whatever number's here is where I'm going to start my graph at. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, I'll start my graph there. And actually, you know what? If we go by 3s, we're going to be off this grid pretty quick here, because that's 6, 9, 12, yeah. You know what we should do instead is we'll go up by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Remember, you can go up by different numbers. Just make sure that as they go up, each of these blocks stays the same value, like a ruler. You can't just randomly assign numbers. You have to make sure that they go up evenly. Each one of these is worth 2 as it goes up, so I'm good to go. And I'm just going to put the figure number across the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Let's do 10, just because we already figured out what it is. And I'm going to plot these things. So 3 would be right in the middle of 2 and 4, so I'm going to make this, that's my starter point. And then it goes up by 4 each time, right? So that means that my next point's going to be at 7. So I'm going to make a point there. Oh, hey, look, my next point's at 7. And then it goes up by 4 again, so my next point should be at 11, and so says my graph paper. So I just keep going, okay, figure number, trace it across, and then count up to where my total is. And what you should see with every single one of these graphs is that it's a straight line. And that's where using graph paper comes in handy, because graph paper, you put the point right on there, and you'll be able to see that it's really, really nice straight line. Pardon me, I had to grab a ruler. So now I'm going to take my ruler and show you a fun trick. Since it's a straight line, I can just keep this line going. And you could see, if I kept this line going, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, we keep going farther up, I'm still not going to get to where I need to go to put on that number 10. And I can see that by how this thing's heading out. So it looks like at 5, I'm supposed to be at 23. If I had grid paper, you'd see that I was exactly there. So each one of these points is just going to be nice and evenly distributed. There's 15, 4 is 19, so up on 4. See how hard this is without graph paper? So you can see it's a nice straight line. It goes up by 4 each time it goes over 1. That's the pattern. This number tells you where your graph's going to start. This number tells you how much it goes up by each time it goes over 1. You should end up with a nice straight line graph, and you should be able to read this graph and find any other points off of it. I'm not going to try to do it here because I don't have grid paper, But what I'm saying is if you took your 7 and you had it on grid paper, you could follow the line up. And I'm going to say that it's going to be somewhere around here because that's the rough sketch that I did. But you should be able to read it off your graph paper perfectly. All right. That's pretty much all your book wanted you to go over for this one. What they're asking you for when it says describe some of the patterns in the graph, that's the whole part where it goes up by 4 each time. It's a nice straight line, blah, blah, blah. So, just a quick recap. When you've got your patterns to start with, you record your figure number in one column. You record your total number of objects in the next column. Your number that each one of them goes up by is the number that's being multiplied by the figure number in your formula. And then this last number is your adjuster. And if you're lucky enough to have a simple pattern like this where there's just one number that stays the same each time, then that's it. Otherwise, you've got to do a teeny bit of math to make sure that you're going to get the answer you need to get. All right, then when we graph it, we set up the coordinates so that each one of these is worth the same amount as every other one of those, and then you just plot them, and what you're looking for is a straight line graph. Now my shortcut was this number, they call that the constant, is where you start the graph, and they call this one the coefficient, because that's a fancy term that makes you sound smart. And that one's how much it goes up by every time it goes over. Ooh, linear relations, they're amazing and they're not going away.